Welcome to the Sendcast. My name is Dale Pickles. I'm the host of the Sendcast and the managing director of B Squared. If you are a new listener, then welcome to the Sendcast. The aim of the podcast is really simple. We want to reach lots and lots of people and help everyone learn more about special educational needs and disability. This week, we discussed how to make an effective education, health and care plan. And this week, I was joined by Ekaterina Harrison. Ekaterina is a solicitor and the author of the EHCP Handbook, How to Make an Effective Education, Health and Care Plan. So lots of useful information coming up. The Sendcast is created and produced by us here at B Squared, and we are the assessment people. We are known for helping schools to show the small steps of progress pupils with SEND make, and we can show that progress from the starting point, which is a really big thing for Ofsted coming in. Over the last few years, we've been creating an inclusive assessment system that can be used with all pupils in primary. So again, SEND, not a bolt-on. And the system has different levels of detail for different levels of ability, but it makes looking at whole school data and comparing your SEND and your non-SEND pupils and looking at that whole school, not just most of them, really easy. And also it reduces teacher workload by only having one system. We've got lovely new AI features which make report writing easier. And of course, having one system saves money. Visit the B Square website or click on the meeting link in the show notes to book a meeting with me to take you through our assessment software and how it can help you. Now, let's get on with that podcast. My guest this week is Ekaterina Harrison. Ekaterina is a solicitor and author of the EHCP Handbook, How to Make an Effective Education, Health and Care Plan, a guide for parents and carers. Her expertise in education law has developed through advocacy work for her children's needs and volunteering with the charity SOS SEN. Welcome, Ekaterina.
Thank you very much, Dale. Happy to be here.
You are very welcome. Now, EHCPs. Despite them being central to support for children with special education needs and disabilities, the EHCP process is often overwhelming and confusing for families.
Yes, it's a good introduction to the system, and everything you say is fair. And so I want to give a little introduction to the book I wrote and why did I decide to write that book. So when I started the HCP process with my own children, I was already a qualified lawyer. So in a sense, I had an advantage. So I could understand and to some extent navigate the complexities of the system. However, there was a moment when I was preparing for tribunals to fight for the secondary school places for my twins. And even with all my knowledge, all my experience, and everything we've been through, I still feel overwhelmed. I felt helpless, and to be honest, felt quite sorry for myself. And at that point, I was thinking that there isn't enough, maybe guidance or some sort of literature or books written in an accessible manner which people could read, which could give them knowledge so they would understand. And around that time, a couple of years ago, I started volunteering with charity SOSN. And I was volunteering as an advisor in a walk-in clinic. And parents would be bringing me their children's plans, and we would read them together and trying to understand what could be done and how I could help and what they could do. And at that point, I realized that a lot of people actually don't know what their plans say. They don't want to read them, and there was a lot of stigma associated with special needs, a lot of shame. And I decided that some resources needed. So people actually show some curiosity about those documents and maybe remove certain negativity around them. Because in the end of the day, HCPs are designed to be powerful tools. And when I was thinking about my book, I was thinking that the main idea is love your HCP, love your document, understand it. And if I could, I would give a badge to everyone saying these exact words. Because when it happens, when basically it's no longer scary, and when you can understand, and when you know what needs to go in, it becomes truly empowering. And this is where a real change can begin. So that was sort of like the very basic idea about how the book was born.
I like that idea about instead of kind of, because I think a lot of parents are saying they're not read their EHCPs, they fought for them, they don't necessarily understand them. An idea of loving it, because it is all that information about your child, and if it's written well, it should be saying this is what my child needs and this is what I'm going to use to make sure I get it, and it's all there.
Yeah.
But that's what it should be. It maybe could be, but that's not
Yes.
necessarily what it is right now from lots of parents.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And that was the reason why the book I wrote, it's written maybe in a little bit not quite usual way the legal books are written. And although it is filled with quotations of the law and explanations how things work, at the same time, I filled it in with certain features which you probably wouldn't expect from a legal book. Like, for example, there are visualization exercises which help you to imagine how sections connect, how HCP sort of work internally, and how sections could be linked to each other. And as a feature which I'm really pleased and proud of, that the book was illustrated by one of my sons, and he made the illustrations. I felt it was incredibly important because in a legal guide about children's plan, it's very important to have a child's voice. It's very important
Very.
when you go through all the statutes, all the codes, and everything to remember that in the end of the day, it's about your child. It's about their needs. And I hope that my son's illustrations convey the naivety and the sort of like wonders of childhood through all this difficult process.
And I suppose, again, thinking about, because we're talking about the actual plan itself, not the process. That's a whole other bit load of pain. We're talking about the actual plan. And I
Yes.
think for so many parents, the plan comes at the end of a very, very long battle.
Yeah,
And
that's
getting the
true.
plan is sort of like, right, I've got it. And it kind of, maybe, as you said, maybe not that reading it, it's the golden ticket. I've been told I need HCP, but perhaps that's all the information they've been given, not understanding
Yeah.
what's in it, or all those sorts of things, or the important parts. I think when you've been fighting that long to get it, you just think, I've got it. I've got the
Yeah.
answer in my hand now. I've got the perfect thing. Everything's going to be fine now.
Yes. That's a very, very good observation. And this is a very important bit. And so when you sort of like look at my book and think that, yeah, this is about what plans needs to have, but hold on a second. I thought that this is a destination. This is basically where we end up, and through all this fighting. And this is unfortunately the reality for many people, for many families, that after everything they've been through assessment process, through long waiting, through basically bringing all that evidence and advocating for their children, they may end up with a document which is not necessarily of good quality. And would be very happy to explore why this happens. But when sort of like when I was thinking about the subject of my book and why it's so precise on the plan, because of exactly this disappointment, which happens when you thought that you sort of like cross the golden gates and here is a pot of rainbow and everything. But suddenly it doesn't work. It needs more effort. It needs something else to be done. And in my book, there is a very basic central idea that do not let your plan to be a chocolate teapot. So they look beautiful. They look very, very sort of like fancy words inside them. But as soon as you try to use them for purpose, they melt and they leave mess, and nobody is sort of like knows what to do. So, and to some extent, I think it's a difficult idea to accept that fighting goes on even after that. But at the same time, I think that if you're prepared and if you are sort of take steps to educate yourself, a lot of pitfalls could be avoided. Although, like I would caveat myself that in the current system, it's very difficult to avoid pitfalls. You probably will fall like in some or many of them. But at the same time, there are certain things to be mindful about, and they can help in the long run. And the idea I sort of also introduce in a book, that the plan itself is a living document. So it's not set in stone. And as child changes, the plan changes too. So although after all the fighting, it's very hard to accept the idea that someone might introduce changes and you're like, oh, I fought so hard. What if something goes wrong? I mean, it's still, plan needs to evolve with the child. So it's, so maybe we just need to see it as part of the journey. So you get there and then you go, and as long as plan stays in place, it sort of should be a reflection of what child needs and what they get.
I would probably say, in terms of, I love analogies. It's if you're going out for a night out for a restaurant, kind of, you're actually at the point of booking a table and turning up for your table that you've booked. That's the point we're
Yes.
at. When you get that EHCP, in reality, what you've done is you've booked a table in a restaurant.
Yeah.
You're then going to get the menu, and at the end, someone's going to get a bill.
Yeah.
That's kind of where that EHCP, the actual document, that's kind of going to set those rules out for what you can have. And if there is going to be funding money, all those sorts of things, that is the actual document. And I think some people see it as a destination. It's not. It's very still early on.
Yeah. Yeah.
And interesting, you said that from that kind of the EHC being a living document and that changing with the child, is there are lots of documents which do not change. And there's a
Yes.
child in a secondary school and their EHCP targets are for that for someone who's in early years because it's never been updated.
Yes. It's, the system has a lot of flaws and disconnections, and some things are not quite working the way they should. And of course, there are a lot to think about how to make a process more straightforward and more beneficial for the child and the family. But yes, it is generally a situation that annual review, unfortunately, either not happening or they are not happening to a degree they should, and there is not enough evidence of changing needs available. And to be honest, I do appreciate a lot of parents' perspective that they're very resistant to change because they think that I got it, I know that it's there, and if any changes, I might get worse. So yes, the system itself requires improvement. And requires, yes, working on what we already know, where the sort of like bottlenecks are, we know where difficulties are, and basically working on those things and make things easier.
So with the whole EHCP process and the EHCP itself, there is a legal definition for everything. There's like, this is how this is the process, the timescales and everything. This is what needs to be in a document. And then local authorities put their own layer on top, which is different forms for parents to fill in, different meetings, different names for things, which makes kind of the whole process for anyone writing a guide a complete nightmare because it's not one guide. It will be a guide for every single local authority. It just gets really complicated. And the law is the law. And
Yeah.
that's what I'm getting to. There is the law, and there's what a local authority says, and there's being confident enough that they're not always the same.
Yeah. So I would say in this situation, let law be your guide. And because yes, it's the same for everyone. And when you say about particular practices or policies in the local authorities, yes, they are different. And to be honest, like, they quite often do not follow law. And sometimes, not sometimes, actually quite often, there is a lot of confusion how things are done. So what happened, to uphold the law, you actually have to go to the special needs tribunal to actually to uphold the legal rights, because at some point there is a need to distinguish practices from legal requirements. And this is what tribunal does. It upholds the law and it sets things right how they intended by the legislators. And it's quite an unsatisfactory situation from a parent's view, because obviously I don't think anyone wants to go to the tribunal to uphold the rights. But at the moment, in a situation where we have funding concerns and pressures, it's unfortunately quite often the only way to actually to get the entitlements set right for the child.
Yep, and I do believe basically local authorities, I think, rely on people running out of energy, running out of steam, not being able to take them that far. That's kind of what they hope, because the win rate at these tribunals is amazing, but also disappointing and shocking at the same time, because it's like 98, 97% win rate
Yes,
on
yes,
the
it
side of
is.
parents.
Yes, it is disappointing and shocking. I agree. And the thing is, like, you're absolutely right. The sort of like you need to be really strong, really resilient to go all the way. And we need to think about all those people who can't do that, and for all sorts of reasons. I mean, in terms of like reliance of local authority on doing that, I do hope, and I sort of like genuinely hope that no one intentionally thinks that let's send everyone to that difficult path and basically see who will survive in that steam cooker. But there is a situation finding ourselves in that we have national legislation which provides entitlement to children and young people with special educational needs and disabilities, but those entitlements are not matched by the available funding. And this creates a situation where basically, I mean, what to do, how to meet those obligations. And this is something what requires some resolution, because in my experience and experience people I meet, that it leads to a lot of trickery, exactly like you said. And I'll say it again, I truly hope that no one sort of sends people in a way of harm intentionally, but it does create quite sort of like an irrational sort of streams and tendencies in the system.
Definitely. Definitely. So if we move on to the document is made up of various sections, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely.
And some are absolutely crucial, but parents may not understand how crucial they are. And they will all be in there. The sections have to be in there, otherwise it's kind of it doesn't exist, a
Yeah.
document. But they can be written in a way that you basically, again, you've gone through this tribunal, you fought, you get this document, and the document ends up as you losing again.
Well, I think that it's a very good direction you pointed us in the conversation about sections in the AHCP. And I think that people who listen, they probably already know that AHCP, they do not have established template or format, although we do have guidance that they need to have 11 sections from A to K. There are three big areas. It's education, health, and social care. And when you say that some sections are more important or not so important, what you pointing towards is the fact that not everything in HCP could be enforced or contested. So not everything you can bring to the attention of the tribunal and get things right. And this comes from sort of limited powers of the tribunal to do it. And it's actually a very important point, because all of those sections matter. It's just when it comes to practicalities, what can you do?
Yeah,
So how can you actually be heard and how you actually can make things work? So yeah, you're absolutely right that education sections, which are sections B, F, and I, this perhaps a cornerstone of the plan. And these are the sections which you can contest in the tribunal, and they could be amended, and they could be sort of like put into work. So section B describes special educational needs of the child. When those needs are described, it leads to description of provision they require, so what actually practically need to happen. And then section A identifies in which school or setting or like all of this is going to happen. So they are all connected. All those three sections need to feed each other. And basically, and in my book, I explain it through a metaphor. I'm saying that you come to see a doctor and they record your symptoms and they record basically what the child struggles with. Then they give you a treatment plan. which is section F, and they say you need this, 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 and this. And then in the end, there comes prescription and medication. So this is a school, basically, which will give you all of those things. And this is how all those three sections. I mean, I didn't invent that metaphor. It actually was in one of the court cases where judge explained it this way. So I think it's very helpful,
But
and it shows you.
it's
Yeah.
very helpful, because that B is, if you've said a load of stuff to the doctor and then they've written it all down, and you look at what you've written down, you're going, no, you've missed off half of it. Then everything after that is probably not going to be
Yeah.
working.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, yes, the doctor can give you the best treatment plan if they know everything. Yes, and they need to know what's happening. So yes, those education sections are the ones which I encourage people in my book to pay their most attention, because the quality of the sections will actually bring tangible results when you go to, if you have to go, not when you go. Sorry for this assumption. If you need to go and enforce them. And it also, yes, other sections.
But I say, with section B, is that when you have like external reports, either private or from the EHCP, that's going to inform all those sections, isn't it?
Yes, yes. And reports, they will inform both B, F, and to some extent section I. Because reports, they follow similar structure. They identify needs, then they say what the child needs. I mean, it's a bit of like needs everywhere, but actually B is about difficulties, and F is what child needs, and then you go into I.
So is that again? It's that I'm going to keep coming back to BNF, because it's so crucial that parents really understand.
Yeah.
Is, if you haven't got the information from all those reports in section B, if all those complexities that you are saying and can see and know aren't in the report, then section F isn't going to support all those complexities. Section F is only going to follow on what's in B. And I think it's one of these things of, when you get to this point, you really need to go, has everything been included that we've done in section B?
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, like, practically, B is very important to outline everything. But when you go to practicalities, F will dictate what you do exactly, because
Yes.
B gave you directions, F what you actually do. And sometimes people just look into F and just say, oh, they need speech language therapy, or they need specialist teaching, or they need one-to-one, and all of that. So B is sort of like a foundation, which
Yes.
everyone knows is there. But F is very practical importance.
Because F is in theory, you should be able to link everything in F to something in B.
Yes, but other way around. It's usually other way around. So you have a difficulty with something, and they say, okay, one-to-one teaching will help you with that. So
Yeah.
this is the link. So it's not like you have one-to-one teaching. That's why it links back to B. No, it all starts in B and goes to
Yes.
F.
So
And then goes to I.
basically, everything in F is going to be linked to something in B. Therefore, if it's not in B, you can't really hold anyone to not doing it. It's such two important sections.
Yes, all of those three sections are of the most importance in the plan. But it doesn't mean that other sections are not important. But I think that you touched on something what's sort of like going a little bit deeper on. So when you talk about reports, and when you talk about what actually goes into plan, quite often when you get a draft plan and everything is written down, it might be already a little bit too late, because how can you influence what plan actually says? Because quite often evidence is just copied into plan. And if you want to challenge something, you need to challenge the evidence, because this is all interconnected. So what's important to remember is that try to be sort of like very switched on in the process at the stage when evidence is collected. So when experts write their reports, it's almost your plan already being written. So if something they say is not quite clear, not sufficient, not enough, or is not consistent, like there are needs, but there are difficulties, but there is no corresponding provisions, it's always easier to question it at the stage of report writing. And in this sense, one of the, I call it a bit of a trickery, but this is actually well sort of like it does exist. The phenomenon or the feature of HCP called whistle words. And I think
Yes.
everyone should know about that. And how those whistle words come in existence and what they are. So whistle words are basically sneaky phrases which steal meaning from the phrase. Like, for example, I would say, you would be given up to 10 hours of specialist support. Up to can mean zero. So that whistle word up to steals the meaning out of the rest of the sentences. And there are a lot of them. And in my book, I go each one by one and just saying where the dangers are. So it could be a child will be given opportunities for. So it doesn't mean that it will be given, there will be opportunities, there will be an open door, or I don't know, anything, but not necessarily provision will be given to that child. Or the child will benefit from, or the child will get support from an adult. Who is an adult? Is it a qualified teacher? Is it someone, I don't know, someone around to sort of like to look after child? So those whistle words are very, very important. And sometimes sort of people ask how all those whistle words end up in how they pass through the expert eye and how did they end up in a, well, they're copied from the expert reports. And in general, there is a little bit of mismatch about professionals understanding the quality of legal language, which needs to go into the plan. And there is this problem because quite often experts like to say, you would benefit from this, which from sort of legal point of view is not quite great. But at the same time, if we go to the HCP process at the time when assessment is done, at the moment, we have local authority commissioning experts to write the reports. And at the same time, local authorities pay for the services. So there is a bit of a conflict of interest running, like you're commissioning the reports and you know that you're going to pay for everything those reports say. So to some extent, I think that there is a connection here that reports quite often come riddled with whistle words because when they come into plan, they're not compulsory, and funding could be sort of like more discretionary in this sense. So yes, this is. I'm glad you listened to all of this sort of quite technical part, but it's important.
It's so important. Again, I think it's one of the things that Section F, which is the weasel word, it's
Yeah.
you could lose again a section. Because if you go to that tribunal and then you get a Section F full of with access, an opportunity, an
Yes.
adult, basically
Yes.
everything you fought for, this section gets them out of all of it.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And you not necessarily at this stage you go to tribunal, but you go to the local authority and you say, I want all of those things, which my section F says, and they say, oh well, the school is giving you access and your child has opportunities, or yes, and certainly will benefit from all of those things. But like it's not happening in practical terms. And to be honest, at this stage, it's not a tribunal you go to. You need to go for judicial review, which is significantly more complex than actually go to the tribunal. So it is a very hard fight, and or you will need to go and question expert report itself, which, as you imagine, it's quite a significant expense to challenge experts and come up with your own evidence.
But I think the main thing with Section F is you really want it to be as specific and quantifiable as possible. So not up to 10 hours,
Yeah.
10 hours.
Yes.
Not
Yes.
with
Yes. It's just
access to, will be
yes.
seen X number of times or year, whatever it is. You want to be able to literally have a number as a parent, how many times this will happen. So when it
Yes.
doesn't happen, you can challenge. If they
Yes.
say up to
Absolutely.
10 times, as you said, 0 is still up to 10.
Yes.
With access to, with one-to-one. If it doesn't say one-to-one, it says access to this they've missed out, they've dropped the 1 to all those sorts of things. What the school needs is the school needs to be able to literally put that into a spreadsheet and come up with a number and ask the local authority for that money.
Yes, and the thing is that, yes, when you have whistle words, and this is actually quite a known thing, that sometimes HCPs and schools, they see that vague wording and they understand that it's actually not quite there. So the funding comes with that HCP will be quite insignificant, because it doesn't give you that precise, as you said, specified, quantified, and properly recorded. So it's almost like you get the plan, but it sort of like does not entitle you to very much.
It's like, as I said to you, let's go out for dinner to a Chinese tonight.
Yeah.
Now, I would expect, if I'm going out for a Chinese, I might be expecting the 3 courses, the starters, then the duck, then the full, maybe 3 or 4 dishes. If I just bought you a chicken chow mein and gave it to you, technically you still had a Chinese. I've met the requirement of having a Chinese, but you might have been expecting spare ribs, chicken satay, all that stuff you have at the beginning, then the duck, and then this. I've still
Yeah.
provided a Chinese, but actually
Oh,
what your expectations were, and I think this is what happens with parents, is you're expecting, you've won the tribunal, you're going to get all this speech and language support, you're going to get all this, it's going to be great. And it's actually that wording
yeah.
really devalues
No, yeah.
the funding the local authority have to offer the school or have to provide the school. And if the school can't get it, they can't provide it. And the parents are left going, but I won.
Yeah, I want to use your sort of Chinese restaurant to say that you will have access to chow mein, but you come to a restaurant and you were told that the chef is not in the mood to cook it for you today. So yes, you have an access, but you can't get it today in particular. And the thing is, like, these things happen at schools, because when you say that the child will have access to, for example, psychological support, and then the school says, oh, we have a psychologist, but your child didn't want to engage, they said they don't want it. So they had access, but they didn't get it. And you're like, oh, come on. It's like it's what the child needs. You're the school, like, make it happen.
And also,
And
there might have been on that day, yes,
yeah.
there might have been some stranger walk in. Do you want to speak with this person? No, never met them before. There are so many
Yeah.
reasons why on that day the child might have said no.
Yeah, and but when you have wording like your child will have opportunities for something, yes, they will be given opportunity, but that opportunity didn't materialize for them. And you constantly play this sort of like a catching up game, like what happened, what didn't happen, what could have happened.
And I think the parents end up thinking it's the school's fault, and they start fighting with the school quite a bit. You're not doing this. It says my child will get this, and it's
Yeah,
the lack of funding means, and it's things like have access to a speech and language therapist. The local authority will, do you have a speech and language therapist come into the school? Yes, that's ticked. Oh, but they're full. We use all their time up. Yeah, but they could go check on them if they need to. So that's ticked. And it's that specific. Once it's specific,
yeah,
then the funding is there, and then the school has to provide it.
yeah. I think this is what I sort of mean by trickery
It
cause
is,
in the system. And it's not only, yes, everyone is sort of like starting hiding behind this sort of tricky words, and you say everything is fine because opportunities were given, but you're like, oh, come on, we're grown up people, we know that this is not what was intended. But then it's system sort of like makes people behave in these ways, because they sort of put in a situation where quite often they don't have any other choice. Although, like, yeah, question of choice is a bit different, like when it comes to children and meeting their needs, especially vulnerable children. So it's quite a sad state of affairs to have trickery going on in this sector.
and it's really, as I said, you go through that whole process, you finally got the HCP, section B and F are going to be the ones that are going to be you've won or you've lost. It's still you still haven't, and it's getting that specificity in there, whatever
Yeah.
that word is,
Yeah.
specificity. I think
Specific
specific wording. There I do.
language. Yes.
That's the thing you really want as a parent. You need to understand that if it is specific, you can hold the school to account. If it is specific, the school can hold the local authority to account.
Yeah.
It's a hierarchy of you want the school to provide this. The school cannot provide it unless it's funded. And if it's specified, it has to be funded. If it has access, then they can just say, well, they have access, don't need to provide any money for that. And that then limits the school. And it's understanding how important that B and the F is to make sure your child is getting that provision.
Yeah. Yes, it's absolutely yes. And when you get a plan, just don't be shy to take a red pen and cross out all of those whistle words and see
Yes.
basically how you can make it more specific, quantified.
And think about if it says the word adult, or what is
Yeah.
the requirement? Is there, if you can find it says a trained person earlier on in the report, make sure that is specified. Yeah.
Yes. So what trained in what? What's that person qualifications and what sort of like they're going to help your child with?
It's all of that is you have to go through a fine tooth comb. If you do have it that specific, you've now got something you can hold someone accountable to.
Yeah.
If it's got those
Yeah.
weasel words, they're going to slip through your fingers.
Yeah. Yes. But like now we sort of like describe the situation in more detail. It highlights how difficult this fight is, how time consuming, and how actually knowledgeable you need to be, like to say, I think that this person needs that qualification to help my child. And I mean, we're no way sort of know like how. So yeah, parents in a situation where they need to educate themselves not only about the law, it's about like all sorts of things, become experts.
But as you said, is if you were going to a car body shop with a dented car,
Mm-hmm.
they go, "Ooh," and then tell you how much it's going to cost you.
Mm-hmm.
Now imagine you went to a body shop and then they said how much it's going to cost them. They'd always say, "Oh, it's not that bad. It's fine. Just a bit of a polish." They will always try. And with the local authority, they are the assessor
Yeah.
and the
Yes.
payer.
Yeah. Going back to that situation, I think we need to separate who pays and who decides what's needed. Yeah.
So when someone's going like, oh, yeah, I'll take you out for dinner, and then it takes you to a cheap restaurant, it's that sort of thing. Is you might think, okay, they've got to do this, they've got to do that, but because they're the assessor and they're the funding party, they are going to make sure they can weasel out of it. They're going to make sure.
Yeah. Whistle out, exactly.
And the school gets caught in the crossfire, in the crosshairs, and the crossfire between the school, the parent, and the council, because they're the person that the parent can access.
Yes, everyone is sort of caught in one way or another, and I think everyone is in a difficult situation. So I think it needs to be untangled to actually to work more straightforward. Because when you think about that and that trickery, what it actually does is that services get delayed. So you could help the child early and prevent escalation. But because it doesn't happen, needs escalate, and before you know, a child cannot cope in that school. They need a special school, and this escalates costs. So when you think about it, that when you saved money on the whistling out from those obligations, where you end up is actually more money, more expensive, more trouble for everyone, and so the whole of this needs to be straightened out and basically work as intended. And intention is to help the children.
And that's the thing. I think lots of people say that the EHCP process is perfectly fine. It lacks accountability. That's the bit for local authorities and so on. There are league tables every year of how bad and timescales and how bad some local authorities are. It is shocking. I think I read recently that Surrey County Council account for 1 in 14 complaints. That's
Yeah.
what, and so you have all of this going on, but nothing's happening. And I think if there was accountability and there were things like that, and again, there's things being talked about, we'll see what comes. But we've mentioned B&F a lot. We
Yeah.
haven't mentioned Section I.
Yes. So Section I is where the school is basically named. So school which agreed that they can meet all of those requirements in F, and that school is named, and there is the whole process around it. And I think that what's also important to remind listeners about is that AHCP has this legal power to allow parents to submit preferences for the school. It's not like without HCP, there is no such right. And HCPs are very, very powerful about that because although it's a preference, it's not a guarantee, but parents are participating in this process and they have a right to go to the tribunal and advocate and basically supply evidence for the school they have chosen. And I think this shouldn't be overlooked because this is something what can dramatically transform life of a child or young person when you actually can steer in the direction of the school which you parent believe is to be the best one. So section I is also very, very important, and process again is not easy, but there are established tests and basically how the selection is happening. And also, like in section I, there could be a mainstream school named or special school, depending where evidence is pointing out. There is something called EOTAS, education other than at the setting. So this is like education out of school or at home. So with HCP, in this case, section I is blank because everything what the child needs will be recorded in F.
So with Section I again, if we come back to Section F, and that
Yes.
specificity is there, all that specific, well, this is what this child needs, and it's really specific,
Yeah.
that will help you as a parent. If it's as vague as the council likes it, it might mean they'll say they don't need specialists, they'll be fine in mainstream.
Yes,
The
absolutely.
more specific Section F is on those requirements, the more
Yeah.
mainstream schools can say, yeah, we can't do that here. That requirement won't fit in our school, and you're more likely to get a specialist setting if you want. The other thing it does is if you are specific and the school says we can't do that, and the parents want that child to go there, then the local authority has to fund it. So again, Section F gets really important. Even for I, Section F is crucial.
Yeah, it's absolutely, and section F feeds section I. So you cannot name the school without evidence in section F about the requirements. I mean, in terms of specificity, it's always good to know what a child needs because it also informs the schools about what they can and cannot provide.
Yes.
And quite often be making informed decisions actually save time to everyone because you don't need to go in circles and basically say that they say yes we can meet needs and you look how you can't do this and this, and without that it's going into circles. And yeah, so robust good wording in F is very important.
Because there are going to be parents who want their child to go to that specialist setting to get that specialist support. There are parents who are going to who recognise that maybe their local authority does not have the setting suitable for the child and want to go to an independent setting, an out of authority setting,
Yeah.
which will cost their local authority more. So again, it helps to have that specificity to make sure you get that placement suitable for your child. If you want your child to go to mainstream and you don't want to go to specialist, again, having that specificity and saying this, the local authority, the school might say, we can't because we do not have that. And then you get into a bit of a fight between you, the authority, and the school. But if you want, if that parent's choice is going to be there, it might actually be cheaper for the local authority to pay for all that provision to be put into the mainstream than for that child to go into a specialist setting.
It's a very good point because I actually think that robust HCPs will facilitate inclusion in the mainstream
Yes.
schools. If you stop this trickery, you can actually achieve higher inclusion. And I think that good proportion of parents will want their children to stay in mainstream and basically be educated there. But at the moment, there are difficulties. And to be honest, I heard from other people that quite often when your child has an HCP school, mainstream school actually encourages you to think about special school because they feel they do not have resources, they do not feel they can meet needs. So it's sort of like, and if they were given that support, more children could stay. So this is again, this sort of like something what needs to be untangled and needs to be set in a rational sort of a way of doing things.
And that's basically underneath all of this, yeah, we're going to go underneath all of it is the child.
Yes.
The local authority is saying, underneath this, we've got to pay. And that's the difference, is you're thinking of the child. The local authority is thinking of the bill, but they're the
Yes.
writing what they've got to provide, and they will
Yeah.
write it in a way they do not have to provide. Then they'll try and make the schools take the children on and not provide that. So that's why lots of mainstream schools are saying we cannot provide, because the funding isn't there for what the parent is expecting, for what the school knows that really should be delivered. But
Yeah.
actually, the wording gets out of the local authority funding what should be delivered.
Yeah. And the thing is like sometimes look at this and you think that there seems to be a price to everything, but not much value. And the underlying value is children's education.
Definitely. And yet, the sooner the support gets in, the least smaller that support will be for lots of children. For some, they will still need that space. But lots of children, if the support is in early, if the right support is there, it will cost so much less in the long run.
I think it's an established. I mean, I don't think it needs to much proof to say that early intervention, yes, saves money in the long term, and it's actually beneficial to children to begin with, and everyone involved in terms of sustainability of system.
So there's going to be a number of documents coming out, I think, over the next 6 months. Curriculum and assessment review, offset framework, power here might be a white paper. So there's lots of documents coming. Hopefully it's not just another round of documents and nothing will happen afterwards. Hopefully we'll actually get some action from these
Yeah,
and changes, because
yeah,
they seem to recognise more support is needed earlier on. When they talk about reducing EHCPs, I really think that's what they're talking about. Not get rid of existing EHCPs, but kind of heading them off earlier
yeah,
by putting that support into the EH, so we're not failing the children, so the EHCP isn't needed,
yeah,
rather than taking them away from the current children who have already been failed.
yeah. I think it needs to be seen what is proposed. I would say, sort of like putting my lawyer hat on, I would like to see a legal system preserved, maybe enhanced, but definitely not diluted. And if people say, we will put it all in place and you will not need any of this, fine. So put it, maybe it work, maybe it will not work, but we still need at least something what we have now. I'm not
Yes.
saying that what we have now is golden standard. No, there are many things which we can enhance and improve. But this is almost like a baseline. So let's go from here. Let's keep it. Let's put innovation on top. Not innovation, but any sort of type of changes and improvements. So we still have at least recourse to tribunals. So we have rights written in the law, and everything else will come as it comes, and we will deal with it as they go.
If we keep the EHCB process with a bit more accountability exactly the same, but we're just supporting children better, so we've not
Mhm.
needed that, then the number of EHCPs should fall because we're supporting children better.
Yes.
Don't need to touch the legal part, just put
Yeah.
the ordinary available provision, improve that, put more support and training around SEN for every single school.
Yes, absolutely. Because HCPs, they are symptoms of unmet needs. So if
Yes.
you're getting better at meeting needs at earlier stage without escalation, then yes, naturally they will go down.
And we'll wrap it up there. So thank you for coming on the show today. Really enjoyed it. I like hammering home the importance of Section F.
Yes.
It's one of the ones I think people don't, as we said right at the beginning, they think they've won. They get this document. Yeah, I've got it. Not actually reading what it says. And they need to embrace it and love it, which I like that phrase. Understand it and read it. And make sure it is specific and hold people to account.
Yes, absolutely. And I do hope that people will feel a little bit better about their plans. Just remember that law is, law is your friend. Your plan is your friend. And this is not something to sort of like feel resentful about or anything. It's actually a beacon of hope. It's a tool.
Definitely. So Ekaterina's given me some links. So link to her book, link to her LinkedIn profile so you can connect with her, and also link to the publisher's website. And as always, you'll find those links in our show notes. And they are wherever you listen to the podcast, or you'll find them on the Zencast website. So thank you for listening to the show. If you haven't subscribed already, please hit that subscribe button. And you can find links to subscribe across various podcast platforms on the Zencast website. So thank you for listening to the show. If you enjoy the show, share it with others. Let everyone know. And everyone does know that we here at B Squared are helping schools to show the small sets of progress pupils SEND make. And over the last few years, we've been making our system more inclusive. That can be used for all pupils in primary schools. For lots of systems, they say inclusive, they include the SEN. We're doing it the other way around. We're now including everyone else in our system. So we have different levels of detail for different levels of ability, but it makes looking at whole school data, comparing your SEND and your non-SEND pupils really, really simple. It reduces teacher workload by only having to use one system. And we've got lots of new features. We've got AI and so many other things that make life easier. And finally, it saves schools money because it's just one system. If you are interested and want to find out more, you'll find a link to the website, and you'll find a link to book a meeting with me in the show notes. And you'll also find out all the other stuff we do as well. So thank you for listening. We'll be back next week with another episode of the Zencast. It's goodbye from me.
And goodbye from from me. Thank you for listening.
Bye, everyone.